Hello. Welcome back to Breaking Out Technology in the Classroom. I'm yours truly, Brady Bame. I am glad to be with you, glad to be teaching this lesson. This is Unit 2, Lesson 3, VR Roadblocks and Challenges. In the last lesson, we had looked at VR affordances and what a person could do with VR. Well, today we're looking at the roadblocks, the challenges. What can't a person do in VR? And what are its limitations? What are the things that make it difficult to create a virtual reality experience? What are the things that make it so that a person cannot actually do what they would like to do with VR? And that's what today is going to be about. So, first of all, behind everything, like we had talked about in the last lesson as well, is ethical design, human-centered design even. We have to ask these questions of, is VR always good? And are the designers creating spaces which prevent harm and support digital well-being? So really, we want the human to be thought about before we even think about ethically designing a virtual reality experience. And there are design challenges when you go to create an experience. According to Meredith Bricken, she says the first design challenge is to shape the wild possibilities of VR into a coherent form. She continues on and says, in the physical world, we can play a game of catch and know that the ball will bounce off the surface of the ground, that it will sound one way when it hits the cement and another when it hits grass, and that it will travel with fairly predictable speed in the direction we throw it. The virtual world contains nothing we do not intentionally include. A virtual ball can go through any surface or not, with whatever behaviors and sounds we decide on. So, really, the possibilities of VR are endless. And if we do not put a stipulation in the experience, something will happen. So there are technical roadblocks as well, not just designing roadblocks. And these technical roadblocks start with acknowledging current hardware limitations with regards to updating and rendering and really the image that you see in the VR headset as well. But also having to try to convince the user into believing that their experience is worth their presence, even though it's not based in reality. According to Raphael Zender, he says usually humans do not question the existence and the social nature of their reality. But this is different when we get into VR, right? Humans look at a different experience and they start to question. They start to question whether this experience is worthwhile, worth their time, worth their presence. And then really they start to look into the social aspects of VR as well and question some of those. With VR, humans do question the existence and the social nature of their reality. Now, there are some ethical concerns with virtual reality and with other immersive media technologies, such as like privacy issues with any biometric data that the device might take in, whether that data is shared with companies or anything like that. And then also how VR should be used specifically, and especially if it's used in a training capacity. We should be thinking about how are we using VR properly? Should somebody really be in a virtual reality training for hours on end? Probably not, right? Maybe a brief 10-minute training video with the VR or a VR 10-minute training experience with the VR that could, you could then take the VR headset off and you wouldn't have to be so stimulated for so long, right? Some of these ethical concerns really make us wonder about whether and how we should use VR for training. Raphael continues on. He says future research in the VR domain should intensify its focus on the benefits and current limitations, as well as on the upcoming risks of this technology and its applications, respectively. There are also physical concerns. These are very simple. It's just, and it should be obvious to anybody who's thinking about ethical or human-centered design. There are physical limitations that some people have. Some people might get motion sickness when they're in a VR experience. Some people could get addicted to the experience and not want to put the headset down. And then yet other people might find so much stimulation and find sensory overload during the VR experience as well. So as far as the accessibility is concerned, for education, sorry, I'm moving my image, sorry. But as far as accessibility and cost concerns are for education, when trying to establish VR in the educational setting, Meredith Bricken continues and she speaks and says, as a former teacher and administrator, I am well aware that inadequate teacher salaries and overcrowded classrooms take precedence over new technology in the minds of most educators. So this is the sense that there are other priorities on people's minds other than bringing in the new ritzy technology, right? But I think that that is sad as an educator myself. If technology is new and it is something that we are using, shouldn't we be trying to teach our students the ethical use of this as well? Well, in education, there's a statement here that I think really holds some truth to it, that Meredith continues and says, she says, educators are concerned that more technology that they aren't trained to use will be dropped in the classroom and that it won't really help them to teach more effectively. Right. So we see some fears based off of this statement. Fears that teachers aren't going to have enough training, fears that it will be useful to their teaching methods, and then also some just anxieties about the misuse of VR. So teachers are thinking about this in the right way, right? They are thinking about the ethical consideration and use of VR. But also in general, not just teachers. People who use VR in general have been shown by Meredith Bricken, have been shown to have fear of losing control to others, such as having hackers take over, fear of denied access. Should everybody be allowed in a VR world? Fear of confusion. What if the blur between reality and the virtual world occurs and you don't really understand what is reality anymore? And then fear of abandonment. If everybody goes VR, will anyone be in reality? Right. So we have these fears, we have these concerns when we're looking at VR, and we really should be thinking about the ethical use. Thank you so much. I hope you have a beautiful day, and I hope you enjoyed today's lesson.